What's good, you guys? Daniel Cruz here, back with another episode of Cook with Cruz. So we had another recommendation for me to break down a sample from one of my sample packs. So that is what we're going to be breaking down today. I'm also going to be breaking down a beat that I made with the sample. So you're going to be able to see basically how I created and put together the sample, and then from there broke it down and made a whole beat out of it. So that's what we're going to be cooking up today. Make sure you hit that like button before we jump in. As always, really helps the series out, so I appreciate you guys that do that. Of course, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss out on these episodes every single Sunday. So without further ado, let's jump in on it. Okay, so the sample I'm going to be breaking down today is from my latest pack, Surge. This was a collaboration pack with CJ Washington. Shout out to him for collabing with me on this pack. If for some reason you haven't heard of this pack already, I'll leave a link in the description for you so you can check it out. I'll also leave a link in the top right corner of the video here. But the specific sample I'm going to be breaking down today from the pack is called Nights in Spain. I've also named the beat Nights in Spain. I thought it fit well, just in case you've heard it already, so you probably already know what I'm talking about. But anyways, let's get right into it. So here's the file for the sample right here. We started off with this guitar that CJ had sent me to work with. So this is what he sent me right here. So now let's go ahead and play the raw guitar file that he sent me to work with. So I thought that was pretty dope. Definitely wanted to build with that. So I don't know if I mentioned this in my previous video where I broke down a different sample from another pack, but just kind of my opinion when it comes to making and building samples. I know for making beats, you definitely want to put a huge emphasis on simplicity and just getting your idea across and just that. With samples, it's kind of the opposite. I'm really not afraid to kind of overdo and add a bunch of different ideas and instruments that I have. So sometimes I really like to fill it up with a whole bunch of different instruments, kind of effects and stuff like that. And the reason being is because it allows the producer to kind of really just pick the sounds that they like from the sample and build from there. As you'll see when we get into the actual beat file here, I'm not going to use every single instrument that I'll be showing in the sample, but it's always good to have those extra instruments to just kind of have those extra tools just in case you would need them, because somebody else could take the sample and make a completely different beat using certain instruments that I wouldn't have used myself. Basically what I'm saying is, as producers, we're pretty technical and we like to manipulate and change a lot of things and mess with a lot of things. So that's why I personally like to kind of just let my imagination run free and just add whatever I want to the sample. Whereas from an artist perspective, for your beats, you really just want them to be simple, because like 99% of them aren't willing to kind of just manipulate the beat to get it exactly how they want. They really want the idea right there in front of them, ready to go. And again, as I mentioned, producers, we like to really break stuff down, manipulate things, change things up. So yeah, that's my opinion, if I didn't mention it already in the previous video, as to why I think it's okay to, I guess, overcomplicate things in the sample, just kind of add a bunch of ideas in there. And of course, make sure we're breaking it up right. You can see we're kind of building up here in the playlist with certain things that I do add. Not to mention, this sample specifically is actually pretty simple compared to other stuff that I've kind of built. So yeah, that's pretty much how I approach samples and making them. But anyways, back to this sample here. I thought the guitar was really strong, and I really just want to build stuff around it to kind of accent the melody and the chords that it was playing. So the first thing I added was this strum pattern right here. So for this one specifically, it is a keyscape patch, wing upright 60s mute. For our effects, we just did some EQ here, and we threw on some reverb as well. For this pattern, I really just wanted to emphasize and beef up the chords from the guitar. So here's what this is going to sound like. So there that goes right there, really just beefing up the chords. And then moving on to our next section in the sample. So first thing new is this pattern right here. This is a percussive loop, in which you can see I kind of chop certain parts in. This is going to really emphasize the Latin vibe that the guitar is giving. So the next thing I did want to add was some bass. So we pulled up Omnisphere. We used the MTAR ostinato bass preset. And all we're really doing is just hitting our root notes of the chords. And now for our next section here. The next new thing is another percussive loop right here. This is going to really emphasize the Latin vibe here. And the last thing I add is somewhat like of a super ambient vocal run. This is going to sit behind everything. It's going to be real subtle. You're barely going to be able to hear it, but here it goes right here. So that, along with everything, is going to just give it more ambience. So there goes the full sample breakdown for Nights in Spain. Let's go ahead and switch over to the project file for the beat so we can see how I made that. Okay, so now we are in the project file for the beat now. So first thing for the beat is I did speed up the guitar. Definitely wanted a club vibe to this track, so that's why I sped it up a little bit. I'm also bouncing back and forth between octaves on the instruments and the sample. So for these two clips right here, we have, you know, the main guitar CJ played, and then this was the strum on the chords that I played in the original sample. Also for the intro here, we have this automation clip for an EQ. That is this EQ right here. I put a bandpass on it to kind of filter it out in the beginning. So that's going to play and then turn off when our beat drops right here. So let's go ahead and play that so we can now hear what we're working with. One thing I do want to mention, which I feel is very small but very important, this little guy right here. This is something I cut out of the chords that I played that I'm going to be using as a transition effect. It's basically the first chord played in reverse. It's going to really build up tension to when the beat drops. It's very small, but without it, I feel like it just doesn't hit as hard. But just so you can hear what it sounds like, here it goes. So that reverse chord right there is really going to help me with the drop. And then coming into the drop, our low octave strum is going to stay right here. And then here's our guitar number 2. So our guitar is also going to drop down an octave. And that wraps up our instruments. Essentially, this is going to be essentially our verse right here. Remember, we're making a beat, so we want to focus on keeping it simple. So that's why we only have 2 things going on, and then we're going to come into the drums. So now, just so we can hear our instruments and how they change with the filter off and the guitar changing octaves, this is what it sounds like. So there it goes, nice and easy. Let's go ahead and go over the drums now. So we'll go ahead and go top to bottom and then jump into our playlist. So first, starting with our clap. Here's our closed hat. Open hat. So here's our 808. Here's our kick to go with that. This is a reverberated clap that I'm gonna use on the 4 as an accent here. Crash. Into the playlist, our percussive loop. I honestly can't remember if this is the same percussive loop that I used in the sample. If it is, then I extended it out and really didn't chop it up. But again, this is important because I feel like it's going to help with the Latin vibe we're going with. And then every 8 bars, gonna have this kind of like clap feel here. And then here's our reverberated clap that we use to accent the end. So that wraps up all the drums. If we did everything right, these drums should come out pretty hard. So there goes our drums. Let's run the intro back now with everything playing so we can hear how it drops. So there goes the drop right there. And again, that is what I consider to be the verse. So as you can see in here, we're really just kind of just structuring it out. This part, we're dropping out the close tat, bring it back in, and then cutting it out again so we can get ready for our hook, which I put right here. So now for the hook, looking into our instruments, our guitar is going to come back to its original octave, so it's going to play high now. We have our original strum playing with the low octave strum, so we have them both playing together in octaves. And the last thing I add is another percussive loop right here. This is like a combination of like some hi-hat and shakers. It just sits well with the overall vibe of the track. So that's everything right there, pretty much in the whole beat. Before I run it back and play it for you guys, as you can see, I didn't take all the instruments from the original sample. Again, making the beat, keep it simple. We just want to get our idea across. Going back to the original sample, we have all those other instruments there that we could have used. So as I mentioned, breaking down the sample, somebody could take that same sample and make a whole different beat out of it because they could be using those instruments that I didn't use personally. So hopefully that makes sense as to why I kind of have that thought process of not being afraid to overdo it when making the samples. Those extra instruments really just become more tools to work with. So, but anyways, let's kind of run it back into the verse for the hook drop so we can hear how it all sounds. So there it goes right there, Nights in Spain, the sample and the beats all broken down for you. If this is your first time hearing the sample or hearing the beat, let me know what you think in the comments. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video already, please leave a thumbs up for me on the video. That really helps keep the series going. If you have any suggestions on what you want to see broken down, please leave them below in the comments for me. I'll definitely make an episode on them. Of course, make sure you're subscribed as always, because I will be back next Sunday with another episode. But other than that, that is all for me today. I will see you guys next week. I'm out. Peace.